Season 7 hype on today's Nerdist News. You know that old saying, a watched block of ice never melts? Well, HBO almost proved it true today. In a Facebook Live event viewed by over 1 million people, the network revealed the premiere date of Game of Thrones Season 7 by slowly melting a block of ice with the date hidden inside. After nearly an hour of increasingly out-of-control fire and a few stops and starts here and there, we were almost ready to give up and get back to our real lives. JK, this is effing Game of Thrones people we're talking about, and we will happily sit through whatever stupid marketing stunts they want to throw our way for even the smallest amount of info. And eventually, our stupid persistence paid off, and we discovered that Game of Thrones will be returning July 16th, along with a new teaser trailer comprised of mostly old footage, except for a little blip of dialogue from Jon Snow warning us that the only thing to fear is the Great War. So wow, a release date, a warning about a great war. It's exciting, but also a bit bittersweet as we start to come to terms with the fact that Game of Thrones is moving for its end game. But what might that end game be? Well, intriguingly, it could all tie into a major guest star getting ready to make his Seven Kingdoms debut. Jim Broadbent recently spilled the broad beans about his role in the upcoming season. Of course, we know speculating on a big-name character actor's entrance into Game of Thrones can often go either way. Remember last year when everyone was trying to predict what Ian McShane's badass dragon-slaying season-long arc was going to be? Turns out he was only around long enough to get hung from the rafters of his half-finished church. But then again, when Jonathan Pryce showed up as a humble High Septon, he managed to stick around for 2 seasons and wreak some pretty heavy havoc along the way. So, what do we think is in store for Broadbent? Well, he did say that he shot 5 episodes and is featured in 1 major scene in each episode. Now, for a normal show, that might still relegate an actor to a guest star spot, but 1 major scene in each episode is how you could pretty much describe Tyrion or Daenerys or any other major player on Game of Thrones. And since Season 7 is only going to be 7 episodes long, and most storylines aren't featured in every episode, a 5-episode arc is enough to suggest that Broadbent's character will have a huge part to play. But what exactly will that part entail? Well, in the same interview, the actor specifies he will be playing an archmaester, an old professor character, and that all his scenes were acted against Samwell Tarly.
Hello.
Confirming that he'll be hanging in Old Town, most likely manning the bookshelves at that massive library we saw in the Season 6 finale. But still, that's not a ton to go on. It would be pretty tough to unfurl an entire theory about how Jim Broadbent's character will lead to Game of Thrones' endgame based on those few tidbits. Unless, of course, you had a Game of Thrones superfan in your midst, which, obviously, we do. Alicia Lutz, Archmaester of House Nerdist. She recently posted an article on the site detailing a long-held fan theory that the Maesters are actually trying to destroy all the magic in the known world. According to the theory, they've been working for generations to contain and control magic, thus increasing their grasp over the realm. It would play into events like the construction of the Wall, a literal physical barrier between civilization and the forces of magic, as well as slow cultural changes like the more mystical old gods getting replaced by the Seven. But perhaps most significantly, we find out in the books that the Maesters were the secret instigators of Robert's Rebellion, which ousted the Targaryens from the Iron Throne and really set all of Game of Thrones in motion. It would of course make sense that the magic-hating Maesters wouldn't be too down with a king who could control dragons, pretty much the literal embodiment of magic. Nor would they be too down with that king's daughter slowly rising up from the ashes of her family's failures and reasserting control over the Seven Kingdoms. So, as we see it, when we meet Broadbent at the start of next season, he's just a kindly old coot excited to show Samwell his really big library. But as the season unfolds, Samwell will learn the true extent of the Maester's control over the kingdom and realize his new book club buddies are secretly responsible for the majority of the shit he and his friends have put up with for the last 7 seasons. Now, combine this with the fact that the season will feature a Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen team-up. Woo! Ice and fire! And suddenly you see what a tough spot this puts poor Samwell in. Does he stick with his dream job and side with the Maesters, or does he let his old flame, Jon Snow, know that they're conspiring against him and his new dragon-riding co-captain? Man, even in Westeros, it's so hard to balance your relationships and your work life. Now, if you want to dive even deeper into the Grand Maester conspiracy, please check out Alicia's article on Nerdist.com. And if you want to talk more about Game of Thrones Season 7, hit us up in the comments. Do you really think the Maesters are Game of Thrones' ultimate big bad? And could Samwell ever really turn his back on his BFF for life, Jon Snow? Let's discuss. Hey y'all, you ready to go a little apey? Because King Kong is back, and he's both kingier and kongier than ever. In Kong Skull Island, the colossal gorilla will go a special kind of bananas when a scientific expedition crashes his island paradise and pokes around where it doesn't belong. Tom Hiddleston, Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, John Goodman, and John C. Reilly star in this classic tale of monster versus man, revealing once and for all how Kong became king. Grab the nearest Vine and swing off to get your tickets because the Mammoth Monkey Business is in theaters tonight. Be sure to tune in every day this month to Nerdist News Talks Back. We're breaking down who is the best villain of all time for March Badness. So join us every day to help us figure out who is the best at being the worst.